countrypreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we've got a special guest. We've got Clyde head football coach Danny Dudgeon. And I'll tell you what, the Clyde Bulldogs they've got it going. They're back.
They do. Off to a 4-1 start, coming off a 1-win season in Coach Dudgeon's first year. Really kind of a foundation-laying experience for him in year one. And they're playing really well. They're coming off an overtime win over Sweetwater, a really dramatic win in which Clyde went for two after Sweetwater had scored. So a 1-point win, 29-28 in that one. 4-1 start, like I said, heading into district now after an open date. And doing so with a lot of momentum. So it's going to be fun to talk to Coach Dudgeon just about the start they're off to. I know that he's really excited with what they've done. This is still a very young team relative to a lot of others, a lot of juniors and sophomores on the squad that are really contributing. So I think Clyde's in a really positive place, and it's been fun to see what Coach Dudgeon has done there in a very short period of time.
Before we start this week's show, we need to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stanford and Abilene. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. All right, and with that, it's time to go over a few of the ball games from last week that were headliners, and we'll start with one of the locals. Wiley got in a wild one against San Angelo Central that ended just in a heartbreaking fashion. Anybody that appreciates the roots for, defense and all that. It just heartbreaking to see the way Wiley lost that ball game at Central. But I'll tell you what, Wiley might be a 2-3 football team, but they're about the best 2-3 football team you're going to see in 5A. That is a good football team. They're just running into some tough competition.
Yeah, very tough. They've played the last 3 weeks. Lubbock Cooper, which is a really good 5A D1 team. Stephenville, which is the top-ranked team in Class 4A and still unbeaten. And then, obviously, last week, Central on the road, a team that can really put up points in a hurry, and they did in that game. But I think
a win over what we now know is a very good Brownwood team, too.
Yes, and Wiley has that as well. But yeah, I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head with last week's game with Wiley. Just, I mean, heartbreaker is the best way to describe it. That was a really good back and forth game. Wiley was down by 14 at one point, came back to take a lead on multiple occasions in the fourth quarter. The last time, put together a remarkable drive. They started the drive with about a minute and a half left. Drive, well, basically the length of the field, score with 19 seconds left. So all they got to do is at that point is keep Central out of the end zone, and then Central moves it real quickly to the Wiley 40. And if you have not seen video of this play, go look it up. Just you can search it on Twitter and you will find video. It is just a remarkable play, and a play where unfortunately
but we got to caution people. You might find it gut wrenching.
Yes,
it was gut wrenching for me, and I didn't experience the loss. I felt for Wiley. I really did.
No, definitely. And it was just a phenomenal individual play by their quarterback, and then a great individual play by the receiver. But when you watch a play, the quarterback from the Wiley 40 drops back, is in a defender's arms. He is sacked for all intents and purposes. I mean, he is sacked. He's able to escape that, retreats about 15 yards into the backfield, rolls to his right, flings up a ball as far as he can, and it's caught, a leaping catch at the 10. The kid splits 2 Wiley defenders and scores with no time on the clock to beat Wiley 63-61 in a classic. That's a game that San Angelo Central fans will be talking about for a long, long time. Not only was it a great game, it was on their homecoming. I mean, that's one that they'll be talking about for a really long time, and just a great game. If I went back and watched it on video after I had covered my Abilene High game, I went back and watched basically the entire game deep into the wee hours of the morning because it was such a great game. And I mean, both teams were just competing so well, so hard. Wiley fought so hard to get the lead there at the end, put together a great drive, and unfortunately it just was not enough in the end. But I think one thing we have learned really quickly that I think, it has to be acknowledged, is this Wiley offense is elite. It's not just good. This Wiley offense, they're doing it to everybody. We talked about the level of competition they're playing. They had almost 750 yards of total offense against Central. The quarterback, KJ Long, had well over 400 yards passing, 5 passing touchdowns for the second consecutive week, in addition to 100 yards rushing and a touchdown for the second consecutive week. So KJ Long is just playing it at an unbelievable level. That offense is playing at an unbelievable level. If they can clean some things up defensively, that's going to be a very dangerous team, both in district and potentially the playoffs. But yeah, just what a heartbreaking way to lose the game. But if you've not seen the video, check it out. It is just an unbelievable individual play and a heartbreaking loss for Wiley.
All right. Also on the local front, an Abilene Eagle football team that had been struggling for a couple of weeks came back strong and knocked off Lubbock Monterey in a big way, 37-7.
Yeah, just another great defensive performance. This defense has played really well all season long. And the big thing I thought for them this week was offensively, they got going a little bit. They left some points on the board in the first half, but in the second half, they really got the running game going. And I think that was potentially a difference maker for this team. If that can be a part of what they're doing offensively, you're going to see some improvement as district approaches. But it's going to be interesting to see with this team. Their offense has struggled some this year. It's a young group, particularly up front. If they can get that fixed, and this may have been a step toward that in their district opener, that puts them at 1-0 in district play now. I think that's a good sign for them. But defensively, this is a very, very good football team, and they showed it again.
All right. Also locally, the Cooper Cougars went out to Odessa, played Permian at Ratliff Stadium. Tough place to play against a bigger school. All things considered, I think the Cougars really had a good showing. They fall 56-28, but they were in it going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that game was a lot closer than the final score would indicate. It was a 7-point game at halftime, a 7-point game going into the fourth quarter. And unfortunately for them, Permian just got that running game going and churning in the fourth, and they weren't able to keep the offensive going. But I think it was a good sign. In talking to Coach Rohn after the game, he was talking about how he felt like his team really fought because they had to overcome some adversity early in the game to get back into it. I agree with you. I think this is a good sign for Cooper, and Cooper's playing well. They're kind of hitting their stride going into district as well. That's a team with a lot of young guys playing at varsity level for the first time in some positions, and I think they're a much better team now than they were in week one. So I think that bodes well for them going into district play as well.
All right, our Big Country Preps game of the week was Comanche at Albany, and I'll tell you what. For me, from my perspective, it was a landmark victory for the Comanche Indians, at least for their program under Jake Escobar. They've had a lot of success under Coach Hermsmeyer before that, but with the rebuilding project with a lot of young players last year and a new system, kind of a struggle last year, Escobar's program, I tell you what, has arrived. They are now 4-1, and they come from behind to win at Albany. And anytime you come from behind to win at a place like Albany, that's significant. That's one of those things that makes everybody take notice of your program. You could tell after this ball game that Jake Escobar, Coach Escobar, fully appreciated the significance of this win. He was absolutely elated with this victory, and he should have been. Albany was a little shorthanded. It doesn't matter. If you go into Albany and come from behind from 14 down and win, that's an eye catcher. Great win for Comanche.
Yeah, huge win, and it was a nice bounce back game from a tough one against a very, very good Toller team. So to go from Toller on the road to Albany on the road in back-to-back weeks, and to be able to get that win at Albany, coming from behind to do it, I agree with you completely. A huge win for Comanche and what they're doing under Coach Escobar.
And Sawyer Wilkerson is legit. He's only a sophomore, 181 yards and 2 scores. Put the ball on the ground once or twice, but I'll tell you what, he is a legit running back that people have to be concerned with. He was a weapon that night. He'll be a weapon for the rest of the year.
Yeah, for sure. It got some size to him. That dude's a battering ram, and just a sophomore, so he's going to be one to follow for years to come.
Of course, we had a number of wild games Friday night, a number of great games, and perhaps the best game in the entire area occurred out in Stephenville, where the Yellow Jackets came from behind to knock off Wichita Falls Rider 43-42. And it's one heart stopper after another for the Yellow Jackets. Their offense is just explosive, but they've got a young defense that's still trying to find its sea legs, and it's resulting in these games that are just over the top exciting at this point. But sooner or later, the Yellow Jackets are going to have to clean it up defensively if they want to repeat as state champions.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think one thing to keep in mind is they are playing just excellent offenses week after week after week. You talk about Ryder, you talk about Wiley, Everman. Yeah. It's just one great offense after another. Midlothian Heritage. All these offenses they're playing are very, very good. The fact that they're able – here's the thing that's impressed me is defensively, if you look at the scoring defense, you're going to come to the conclusion that they need to make more stops, and that's fine. But this is the second time this year that they have won a game after falling behind 21-0. And you got to play some defense to make that comeback. So,
yeah, against a very good team.
Exactly.
They erased against Everman. They came from behind 21-0. They're doing these against really great teams.
Yeah, and this Rider team is excellent. This is a very, very good Rider football team. So how confident
do you have to be to have Rider as your homecoming game? How confident do you have to be?
Well, and sometimes it's circumstances. Wiley had to play Stephenville as their homecoming game because their choices were Lubbock, Cooper, or Stephenville. So it's like they're not bringing patsies in town for those. But what a win for Stephenville. And what a season. This has been a super fun season to follow Stephenville. They got Brownwood next, so that's gonna be another fun one.
All right. Some games that come to mind, just off the top of my head. Early goes to Burnett and falls 49-48. That's a loss, but it tells me one thing. This is a Burnett team that gave Brownwood a really tough go, and an early nearly knocks them off on the road. And that really demonstrates how good this early football team is. It might be a loss, but this early team at the 3A level is, once they finally get into district play, is going to be awfully tough.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a good showing for early to hang with Burnett the way they did. But that was interesting. We mentioned, including that one, including the Stephenville game, including Wiley, we had 7 games decided by one score. I guess eight games, because you have to include Clyde Sweetwater as well. But you talked about Burnett early. Windthorst beats Haskell 26-20 in overtime. Big Spring edges Snyder 27-24. Hamlin beats Quanah to improve to 4-1, 14-12, and then Kermit defeated Forsan 14-13. So just a ton of really close, really exciting football games last week. And I think we're getting to a place where we're starting to learn a little bit more about each of these teams every week, and it's gotten to be just a really exciting season. I'm excited to get into district, because clearly it's going to be a really a competitive season. I think a lot of really good competitive, really high intensity games.
Yes, absolutely. And there's some teams that got off to slow starts because of very difficult schedules, or a lot of injuries, and they're going to be factors down the stretch. I'll throw one out at you. It's the Brady Bulldogs, who knocked off Cristobal. That's a good Cristobal team, by the way. It knocked them off 47-27. They started off 0-3. Brady did. They've won 2 straight now. And down the stretch, they're going to be a factor. Their quarterback, Hayden Baronet, is just absolutely on fire. He was our player of the week last week. He may be our player of the week again this week. At least he's going to be one of the top contenders. He accounted for about 7 touchdowns in that Cristobal win. And he's looking as one of the best quarterbacks in the entire big country at this point.
Yeah, and in another team that fits that bill, and maybe no team more so, the Brock Eagles, who opened up district play with a blowout win over Boyd last week after starting 0-4 against just a brutal schedule. But that's the thing about high school football, is if you've had success in the past, you're going to be playing a really tough schedule. And if maybe you're a little bit younger, it's going to be tough to maybe post the record you want to in non-district play. But these are still really good football teams. And Brock, like Brady, led by a really good quarterback in Tyler Moody. So this is going to be a very, very good Brock football team. I think they showed that last week, but it's going to be fun in districts. I think they've got some tests coming when you talk about Whitesboro. Paradise is very, very good this year. So it's going to be a fun go, but they're another one that got off to a slow start record wise, but don't let that fool you. They're going to be right where they always are come playoff time.
Okay. Now this wasn't a close ball game, but it was a stunner to me as far as point spread is concerned. I didn't see Brownwood knocking off Waco Connolly by 31 points. They absolutely throttled these guys, and that was a very good Connolly team that they beat up on. Lions are now 4-1 and are this close to being 5-0. They're that close. A couple of turnovers away, and that Wiley loss, they could be 5-0 at this juncture, and they go into Stephenville this week, so that should be a great one.
And they've played a tough schedule as well. They've played a lot of really quality teams as well. So I think that this Brownwood team has been every bit as good as I think you and I thought they would, and been a really fun story. If there was one game that really did surprise me, and I think there are some mitigating factors to it, but that was Roscoe's loss to New Home. It fell 60-32 to New Home. Really struggled on the defensive end, gave up a whole lot of yards, a lot of points. One thing I think that is important to remember is that this Roscoe team is about 2 games behind everyone else in terms of experience. I think that's important. And they've also had some injuries to some guys who are going to be difference makers once they get some of those guys back. So I think Roscoe is still in for a very strong season. But that score, when every Friday, you and I kind of, after we get done with our games, or go through our scoreboard and kind of see, that was one that jumped out to me. I did not expect that result, particularly that margin, but it's going to be interesting to kind of see how they bounce back from that one. So I think that this Roscoe team, by the time they get into district and into the playoffs, there's going to be a dangerous team. But that was one that I think they did take it on the chin a little bit last week.
All right. Another one of the ball clubs that we'll be talking about at length here in a moment when Coach Dudgeon joins us are the Clyde Bulldogs, who knocked off Class 4A Sweetwater last week by 1 point. You just mentioned that score. But I'll tell you what, Clyde has exceeded my expectations. I thought they would be a playoff team shooting for that number 4 spot, taking a step forward. Right now, they could challenge for a 2, or they could challenge for a 2 or a 3, the way they're looking. And this is wide open as that district is. District 3 3A D1's tough, but I don't think it's as tough as we anticipated.
No, I'd agree.
overall.
I think so too. I think, and honestly, I think both of those teams have exceeded my expectations. I think Clyde's got an opportunity to compete higher in that district than I thought before the season. And I think this Sweetwater team, which was very, very young coming in, has been surprisingly competitive. And I think they're a team that's going to have an opportunity to make the playoffs in their district as well. So two things to keep an eye on going forward. But that was a really good game between two teams that I think have both been more competitive than a lot of people thought they would be.
All right. And before we bring on Coach Dudgeon, we need to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts throughout the school year. Also, for the love of the game broadcasting, and our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, 97.7 FM KATX out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, 94.7 FM KWKQ out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is for the love of the game broadcasting. And Rob Durham, sales consultant at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac up in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a vehicle, new or used, give him a shout. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. Call him at 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham at Bear Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge.
And with that, it is just about time to get Coach Dudgeon on, and it looks like he is ready and waiting. So let's go ahead and get that conversation started.
And joining us now via Zoom, Danny Dudgeon, the head football coach of Clyde High School. Coach, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for letting me be here.
All right, Coach, off to a 4-1 start. What are the keys to that turnaround thus far?
I think main thing is our kids, we return a bunch and they're more comfortable with what we're doing. Obviously, we knew we had a pretty good group of skill kids coming back. But what's been really exciting is seeing our linemen start to kind of mesh and gel. Obviously, we just got off of a really tough fought football game on Friday night. And what was encouraging about that is when things were kind of going slightly awry, we're able to line up and just run the football. And when you're able to do that and kind of settle things down, that's a huge sign of growth, in my opinion. And obviously, offensively, we want to be able to throw the football and we want to be proficient in that aspect, but we also want to be able to run the ball and control the clock when it's time to do that. I mean, I thought at times last night against Sweetwater, you saw us have the ability to do that, and it was very, very encouraging.
And Coach, when we talked before the season for the preview, and I think we both kind of expected this team to show progress, just given what y'all had back and kind of the experience factor. But has there been anything about this quick start that has surprised you? And if surprise is the wrong word, just what has impressed you the most about what you've seen so far from your team?
I think the thing that's been most impressive is you knew you had a good group of kids. We knew our skill kids were coming back. Blake Carr, obviously at quarterback, his numbers are through the roof, and none of that surprised us. What we didn't know is how they would handle adversity. And that's something that you just unfortunately can't find out until they get into it. And this group has really taken the aspect of, we're going to go to work every day. We're going to not let things bother us. And we're not going to let situations get kind of in our way. And we've been able to really overcome that since that first ball game. Cisco, we actually left the ball on the 7 twice in the first half, or it would have been a 21-20 ball game at halftime. And ever since then, they've kind of taken the approach of, we're not going to let the situations control us anymore. And I thought you kind of saw that come to a full fruition on Friday. They didn't play their best football by any means on Friday night. They probably played the hardest we've gotten to play, but we didn't execute as well as we had all season. But just the grittiness and the determination to get themselves in a situation where they can go win a football game. That's been the biggest surprise, because in my opinion, in my experience, that's always the last thing to kind of come around when you're trying to rebuild a program like this.
Coach, the one drawback to your program getting better and better is the competition is going to get tougher and tougher. Nobody is going to be overlooking the Clyde Bulldogs. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and we tell our kids right now, and I think Sweetwater was a great example of that. We're going to get everybody's best, and rightfully so. And now we've got to take the approach of, we want to expect that, and we want to embrace that prospect. I think last year we got comfortable with people trying to just kind of get through the game, get it over with, and move to the next week. And we were able to kind of stay with some people in those games, but weren't able to shock anybody. Now it's the opposite. Now people are going to try to do things to us. You're going to see funky stuff. If you watch the highlights from Friday's game, there was a faked field goal, the fake punt, the reverse, onsides, everything under the sun, trying to get the game to Sweetwater's side. And hats off to them for trying those things. But our kids have got to become comfortable in that situation. We're no longer the ones that are trying to knock people off. People are now trying to knock us off. And it's a very different situation for kids.
And Coach, you've kind of touched on this, kind of the mental toughness aspect, the adversity aspect, but how nice was it, given the fact that your first 3 wins were pretty comfortable wins? How nice was it to have that type of game that came down not only to the end of regulation, but to overtime as well, where you had to make a do or die play? How much, with district approaching, how important was it to get a game like that in?
I think it's huge, just because the main thing is our kids now know how to handle that situation. And you can't teach those. We rep them, the 2-point play. We rep that situation 12 minutes every Wednesday. And we have a handful of plays that we work on. So that part wasn't a surprise, but how our kids handle those situations, unfortunately, you can't do anything until you see them live in those situations. I thought our kids did a really good job of it, and I think you look at our district, it's going to come down to some overtime games, some really close football games. I don't know that there's a lot of disparity in any of us right now. Honestly, I think Breckenridge has kind of gotten off to a really, really hot start, but the rest of us are all kind of in a similar boat. And so I think just our kids getting into one of those kind of games against a very good Sweetwater football team, they're getting better every week, is only going to make us better when it's time to go in 2 weeks.
And you've mentioned his name, but Blake Carr is obviously having a great season for you at that quarterback position. Just What have you seen from him in terms of growth, not only on the field, but just in a leadership role and kind of taking ownership of that offense?
Yeah, I mean, he's the ultimate kid of what you want as a quarterback, and I know that's easy to say, and I've been blessed to coach some really, really good ones. But he wants to win so bad, and he doesn't really care how that looks. He just knows whatever it takes to get to that win. I like I said, I don't know that we played our best on Friday night, but the touchdown to get us in a chance to go for 2 was 100% Blake Carr just refusing to let somebody tackle him. They had him dead to rights in the backfield, and he slipped the tackle and found his way into the end zone to give us a chance to go win that football game. And that's the kind of kid he is. He's constantly watching film, constantly asking questions. His dad is an ex-coach. He's one of our administrators here at Clyde. So obviously a very football savvy kid, but just a wonderful leader. Our kids all follow him. And what I admire most about Blake is he comes to work with a smile on his face every day, and he's ready to go to work. And I think our kids have started to kind of follow suit from that. And I think that's why you're seeing some big time growth in some spots that we were probably thinking may take us another year to kind of get there.
Coach, talk about your district. I look at some of the records of some of the teams in your league right now, like Iowa Park and Jim Ned, and you can throw that right out the window right now. That doesn't mean anything. This is a tough league that you're in.
Yeah, it's a very tough district, a very physical district. I think that's going to be the thing that's kind of the big key on that is you watch these other teams play in our district. They're all very, very physical football teams. And so obviously there's several things that go into factor when you get into a district like this. You got to take care of the football. You got to stay healthy. And you got to be able to kind of weather the physicality that's going to happen at you. We're not the biggest football team. I'm not going to tell anybody that we are. What we do play hard, and we know right now that we're going to get hit in the mouth, and we're going to have to hit people in the mouth in this district. You look at Vernon, who is much improved, similar to us. That'll be the first one. Iowa Park, obviously their record has not shown it, but you watch them on film, you can see the physicality and the athleticism coming through the roof. I think Jim Ned has fought through their injury bug, and it's starting to come out on the back end of that. And then you look at Bowie, who's a young team, but very explosive. And had done a lot of good things offensively. And then you obviously have Breckenridge kind of sitting out there looming, who obviously, they returned several kids who've done kind of what we've done, started them all as sophomores, kind of bit the bullet. Now they're seniors, and they're starting to reap the reward of that. And so week in, week out, I think you're going to see a lot of parity in this district. I don't think anybody's going to get through it just completely unscathed, if you will. And I think at any given night, somebody can beat somebody that nobody's expecting, and that makes it fun, but it also makes it stressful because you've got to go to work and be your best every Friday night once you hit district play.
All right, and like you said, after the open date this week, you got Vernon coming to town after that, and this is a much improved Vernon team, and team that is in some ways similar to y'all, just in the fact of the start they're off to. Just what are you expecting from that matchup, and kind of I guess talk about kind of getting started with district play with that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big game. I mean, obviously they all are now. Vernon's very, very physical, very sound in what they do. They've kind of gone back to some old school wishbone stuff, which it kind of brings you back to the Vernon heydays. I grew up watching Vernon and South Lake Carroll playing in the playoffs in the 90s. A lot of people don't know that was even a thing, but back when the wishbone was the thing. And you're seeing a lot of that from Vernon. Very tough kids. They play extremely hard. I think Coach Sherrill's done a great job of kind of developing that program into where it is, similar to what we're doing here in Clyde. Kind of different philosophy from us. They're not going to try to throw the ball around a whole lot. When they do, they try to make it hurt. But they are going to hit you right square in the mouth, and they're going to try to see if they can just kind of impose themselves on you. I think you watch the film of them against Burnett. They did the very similar things to Burt Burnett. They jumped out on them 21-0. Burt Burnett was able to kind of weather that storm and fight their way back in it, but they've been able to do that to almost everybody they've played. Obviously, we don't know a whole lot about their opponents just because of commonality. We're in a different, really almost a different region of the state, if you want to call it that. But watching on film, first thing that jumps through the roof, they're very sound. They don't make mistakes. And it's going to be a very tough football game. And I think it's going to kind of set the tone for the district on who gets out of this one unscathed and who gets the victory on this one.
Coach, obviously you don't want to look too far ahead. You got a tough road to hoe in this district, but if you do land a playoff spot, how tough is it to get out of this region?
I would argue that we've got the toughest region in 3A. You look at, obviously everybody knows Brock is sitting over there. I think Whitesboro is very, very talented in that district again. They returned their quarterback and have done great things. And I think the surprise of that district from everybody I'm listening to is Paradise. Have really put on a really good offensive presence out there. But then you go into the Panhandle, you got Shallowater and Bushland sitting in the Panhandle, who are very, very talented football programs. And obviously there's others in those areas that are very, very talented, but those are kind of the two in the Panhandle that have dominated it so far. I don't know that there's an easy road. Everybody asks, well, do you want to be first, second, third, fourth? I don't know that any of them are just easy per se. You're going to run into one of the big dogs pretty quickly. And so you look at our region, whoever gets out of our region is going to be extremely battle tested and be able to execute at a very high level. I know Brock is only 1-4, but they're only 1-4 because of who they've played. And we all know that inside the region. Nobody's sleeping on them by any means still. And so very, very tough region, very, very talented football programs inside of our region, and also very, very well coached. You look at all of them. One thing that I admire about our region is you're seeing lots of really, really good coaching. And that's something that isn't always the case inside of an entire region like this, but it is in ours. And so any road we go is going to be obviously a battle tested one. But we do look forward to the opportunity of hopefully getting into one of those roads where we have the chance to try.
Coach, tell us about the response that the team is getting around the community, on campus, et cetera, from people who've gone to Clyde that follow you.
Yeah, it's great. In our community, I was really proud of our community last year going through 1-9 season. We really never felt like they had kind of left us. But what we were most proud of now is that we have had success. Those same people are still sitting in the stands supporting us. And obviously the community wants to see successful kids. And I think you're starting to see that turn. We have lots of community help here. It's a great place to be. And we've got a lot of good things going. We're actually adding new facilities as we speak and drawing in from that deal. And then our community supports through the roof. We have a group of dads that love to be around and love to be involved. And then our moms do all kinds of great stuff. And then our administration is just awesome here. We're very blessed to have them. They're invested in the program in the right ways. And they're invested because they want us to be successful. But at the end of the day, they want us to help develop great young men and women inside of our athletic program. And so that's been a really fun process for me and really fun to see it kind of grow as what we've done on the field has grown, if you will.
That's kind of to lead us into the last question, kind of talk about the trajectory of the program. Obviously, you've gotten to see it go from where it was last year to where it is this year, and you've still got a really good junior laden team. A lot of sophomores, juniors on that squad that are going to be leaders for you for years. So, just talk about kind of what it's been like to watch that and how exciting it is right now to be heading this program, because it seems like the trajectory is pointed straight up.
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited about our junior class. Obviously, is kind of the bell cow class, if you will. But behind them is a really talented groups. Our sophomore and freshman both are very, very talented. And our numbers are up. We're over 90 kids in the athletic program, in the football program at the high school. We've got over 200 kids in our athletic program at the high school, boys and girls. So almost half of our student population, is in athletics. I mean, that's a great sign. We've got over 80 in the junior high playing right now. So for a school our size, our numbers are through the roof. Our records are showing that we're showing progress. Even being young on the varsity still, our JV has got a winning record right now, and they're extremely beat up. We've had a lot of anomaly, severe injuries at our JV level, but so our younger groups are very, very excited. And I think you're starting to see some of that cohesion come in. Coaching staff has now been here for 2 years. You're starting to see them understand that. You're starting to see the community know what to expect out of us as coaches. And I think that's only going to grow. And obviously we're starting to show signs of a little bit of growth. We'll see if that continues. And so I think the trajectory of it is extremely high. I think it's a wonderful place. And like I said, our administration is fully on board of what we're doing and the changes we've made. And I think you'll see a lot of progress very, very quickly. I don't think this is a one-year wonder by any means. Obviously, we think we're going to be very talented in the future, but I think our younger groups coming as well have a lot of talent and are doing a lot of really, really good things.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time, and we'll be keeping a close eye on the Clyde Bulldogs.
Thanks for having me.
And that was Clyde head football coach Danny Dudgeon. And I'll tell you what, Dan, it's good to see the Clyde Bulldogs back in the arena here. It's good to see them getting their struggles behind them.
And just from a personal standpoint, I'm really glad to see Coach Dudgeon having the success he's having. And I talked at length when he took that job, having had the experience I had with him at Cooper, where he was their offensive line coach and co-coordinator before taking over the offensive coordinator role. I had some experience with him, and I really thought he would do a good job there. And I think we're seeing that now. Last year was obviously a tough experience with a very young team. A lot of foundation laying, like I said at the outset today.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that last year was just kind of getting ducks in a row and getting the program headed in the direction he wants to get it. And now you're seeing some of that vision really play out. You're seeing a lot of the things that he wants to do from a scheme standpoint, and they're just so much farther ahead, which I think you expect from year 1 to year 2, and it's been neat to see. So I'm really glad to see both Dudgeon and Clyde. I think we talk a lot about this with different programs, but I think big country football is more fun when Clyde is a big part of it. So it's been fun to see them emerge as what looks to be a real contender for a playoff spot this year.
Absolutely. We both thought that they would contend for a playoff spot, but now the way it looks, they're going to contend for a higher seed as well. They're going to be right there in the mix. And so they've exceeded our expectations, frankly.
Yeah, definitely. And that district, obviously, like Coach Dudgeon said, I think Breckenridge has kind of separated themselves from everyone else just a little bit with basically what they've done in non-district against some of the level of competition they've played. But after that, it does look pretty wide open, much more open than we probably thought it would be at the beginning of the season. So it's going to be fun to see how that's going to be a really fun district to follow. There's going to be a lot of really fun, competitive, physical games in that league, and I think Clyde's going to make some noise there.
And with that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you that we got 3 separate subscription packages here at Big Country Preps. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got an annual 12-month subscription where we knock that price down to $3 a month. $36 for a full year of Big Country high school athletic coverage. And if you look at what we're producing, nobody's coming close to what we're producing in the high school arena in this area. Nobody.
We'd also like to remind you that if you see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, those are available for purchase. We have photo downloads available for just $7, as well as some keepsakes and prints. So as you're scrolling through the site, make sure you check those out. You'll notice pretty quickly we take a lot of photos from these games we're at. It's something we enjoy doing and something we are very proud of here at BigCountryPreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.